When I started at Wunderman about 3.5 years ago, people would sometimes sort of disparagingly refer to it as a direct marketing agency. And you say, well, actually today all marketing is direct marketing, so we can do, we can do everything, which I think actually in some extent is true. We worked on the proposition, so it's sort of creatively driven, data inspired, which I think is sort of the right way around. So we're not in the data driven creativity space, so we're still in the idea space, but actually understanding data and the role technology plays is critical. And to some extent what we've done at Wunderman over the last 3.5 years, I wouldn't say is the role model for WPP, but it's also a lot of what the industry as a whole needs to do, which is embed data more in the way we work, embed technology more in the way we work. But also remember, we're here at Cannes, and it's an ideas and innovation festival. That's just as important.
So I wanted to ask you, not to get too deep in the weeds, but do you think that GDPR is going to have a big impact, or has an impact, or is it sort of just a thud?
Well, I think that GDPR has had a big impact in Europe. I mean, I got a lot of emails, I got a lot fewer newsletters than I had a month ago, which may be a good thing. If the ones I have are more valuable to me, I think that's a good thing. The EU and the US take different approaches to privacy. The EU approaches privacy as a sort of human right, something that consumers come to expect. I think the US view companies can do what they want to do, so long as they're clear about what they want to do, right? So as long as they do what they say, they're fine. So two very different kind of philosophical approaches to privacy. I think we've seen particularly the last 3 months, some people in the US say, well, actually some elements of what the EU do would be quite, good to have in the US. Protect consumers a little bit more, not necessarily against themselves, but against things they don't understand. And I think you see a little bit, in the EU, some people saying, well, actually, some of what the US do in terms of innovation, that might be quite valuable as well. So I think, in the main, GDPR has been a challenge for companies, but I think it's been a good thing as well.
So Mark, I wanted to ask about the supply side and the inventory that you guys can get. And of course, there's been a lot of discussion about the transparency around inventory. Of course, Group M has been very vocal about it. What do you see in terms of the health of the supply side, what you would like to see, and what certainly your clients want to see?
Yeah, I think that Group M has really taken a leadership position from a privacy perspective, from a viewability perspective, from a piracy perspective. And we talked a lot to our clients about what they need to do to make sure that their marketing messages appear next to content that they'd like it to appear next to. So I think that's one thing we need to do to continue those efforts. I think as an industry, no one part of the industry can solve the problems on its own. It requires cooperation between various players. I do think that in an industry, in a market where two companies take a large share of the advertising dollars, now they're paying a lot of that back to people in the industry, but I do think we need a market where people can afford to create quality content, particularly in news. But then I think it's incumbent on news organizations to evolve and innovate the way they create news, the way they work. So I think each player in that ecosystem, agency, client, media owner, technology company has a role to play, and actually it's the sort of cooperation around them and the coalescence of interest that will help us. Now that doesn't mean we shouldn't say what we think, right? So if we think a media owner needs to do more in terms of viewability or standards, then we'll say that as well. So we'll never shy away from protecting our clients and their interests.
And finally, Mark, I wanted to ask you about sort of the state of the industry. There's a lot of changes. There's some talk about the book, the Canaletta book. There's some talk about the emergence of the consulting firms taking some big positions here. One of your big holding companies is not really here. Some have pulled back. You guys have a big presence. How do you see Cannes, and how do you see sort of the changing role opportunity for WPP in this changing world?
Yeah, I've said that I think our industry is a time of structural change, not structural decline. So I think we have to take that as it is, right, and change. So I think if we do, we'll be successful. So I'm optimistic about the future, if people are prepared to make the changes. Cannes is one organization. I've said in some ways this year is sort of a fresh start for Cannes. You know, it's shorter, more focused, you know, fewer entries, one would hope higher quality. You know, so I think that if we have a better festival, you know, it will prosper. In the same way, our industry, you know, and I include WPP in that, need to make changes as well. You know, we need to become simpler to navigate. We need to focus on ideas and creativity, which is really our secret sauce. But also we need to think about how we use data, how we embed technology in the work we do, how we make ourselves easier for clients to navigate. So I'm optimistic about the future, but I'm not naive about the amount of change, you know, that we need to do to be successful in it.